This is over my house right now. What is that?
You're telling me we don't know what the hell these drones are in New Jersey are? Is that correct?
That's right.
It's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. That's madness that we don't know what these drones are.
Frustration is mounting in New Jersey with more and more reports of drones spotted in the sky at night flying over neighborhoods.
Today, New Jersey State Police and Homeland Security briefed mayors from every corner of the state. However, some of those mayors tell CBS News Philadelphia that the meeting was virtually pointless. New Jersey reporter Ryan Hughes has the latest from Ewing.
This is over my house right now. What is that?
That is the question that has baffled federal investigators. And on Wednesday, many mayors across New Jersey walked out of state police headquarters in Ewing frustrated. They say they were given hardly any new information after being briefed on the mysterious drone sightings. Collingswood Mayor Jim Maley even headed home early.
I left after only 10 minutes because they said there's nothing new they're going to tell us. They don't know where they come from, where they land, what they are, what they're there for.
Last week, Easham Township Police first reported the sightings expanded to South Jersey. The large drones hovering in the sky at night were first reported over North and Central Jersey, and there have been more sightings in Philadelphia's suburbs. The FBI is leading the investigation.
They're monitoring the duration of their flight, but they really don't have a way of tracking.
Delran Mayor Gary Ketchambrone says he's not aware of any sightings over his township, but his main concern is having little information to pass on to residents as the mysterious drones hover over homes and highways.
Colonel from the state police said he was meeting with the governor and would be passing some of the questions along.
The White House says President Biden has been briefed on the matter. Right now, investigators continue to say there is no indication of a threat to the public, but Maley wants more answers, and he feels like the briefing was a waste of time.
I thought there was something that we needed to know, and that it was going to be shared to let us know. There is nothing.
I'm concerned. I issued a letter to ask for more information, and I think there should be a lot more transparency about them.
Are you hearing from constituents?
Yes, I am. And elected leaders.
Are you expected to be briefed today?
I hope so. Again, I've been a little frustrated. There hasn't been enough transparency, letting people know what's happening. It's allowing a lot of potentially misinformation to spread, or at least fear. We should know what's going on over our skies, and I've asked for a lot more information.
Officials still don't know who's behind dozens of mysterious drones flying over New Jersey. The Pentagon says there's no evidence that the drones are from a foreign threat. In fact, White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby tried to calm any worries earlier today.
Now, finally, I just want to add a few comments on the reports of drone activity here on the East Coast, particularly in and around New Jersey. We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat, or have a foreign nexus. The Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are investigating these sightings, and they're working closely with state and local law enforcement to provide resources using numerous detection methods to better understand their origin. Using very sophisticated electronic detection technologies provided by federal authorities, we have not been able to, and neither have state or local law enforcement authorities, corroborate any of the reported visual sightings. To the contrary, upon review of available imagery, it appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully. The United States Coast Guard is providing support to the state of New Jersey and has confirmed that there is no evidence of any foreign-based involvement from coastal vessels. And importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace. Now, that said, we certainly take seriously the threat that can be posed by unmanned aircraft systems, which is why law enforcement and other agencies continue to support New Jersey and investigate the reports, even though they have uncovered no malicious activity or intent at this particular stage. While there is no known malicious activity occurring, the reported sightings there do, however, highlight a gap in authorities. And so we urge Congress to pass important legislation that will extend and expand existing counter-drone authorities so that we are better prepared to identify and mitigate any potential threats to airports or other critical infrastructure, and so that state and local authorities are provided all the tools that they need to respond to such threats as well.
John, on the drones, does the U.S. government have any of its own imagery or video of these systems?
I'm not aware that we have U.S. government produced imagery ourselves, but as I said in my opening statement, we have certainly done thorough analysis of the existing imagery.
Like from people's cell phones that we're seeing? Basically, with what you're looking at, how can you credibly tell people that there is no public safety threat, there's no national security threat, that there's no reason to believe that a foreign government is involved?
Because the analysis thus far, in an investigation that is ongoing, has not revealed any national security or malicious intent or criminal activity. But, Jackie, I would remind you, we're at the beginning here, not the end. There's a lot more work to be done, and we're working closely with state and local authorities to gain more information. I would argue that we're moving pretty well here with a sense of energy to try to figure out what we can do to learn more about this. We're still in the middle of an ongoing investigation, and I'm up here explaining to you and letting you know what we know so far, what we believe so far. If information comes to light that changes that characterization, then my goodness, we'll be the first ones to let you know. But right now, there's just no indication that this is some sort of foreign malign activity or, in fact, even criminal.
Well, what I don't understand is, this has been happening since late November. I don't know that the law enforcement officials or residents in New York and New Jersey, or even the Democratic senators who wrote to Director Ray Mayorkas and the FAA administrator today would think that this has been handled with a sense of urgency. But that being said, has the President or the Secretary of Defense issued any guidance to NORTHCOM or military installations to act on these systems if they are deemed to be a threat in any way? And what's the benchmark for that determination?
So two thoughts. First of all, you're right, late November. It is now, the 12th of December. So I think it shows that we're moving on with this, and we're going to stay on it. So I want to disabuse you of any notion that we're not taking this seriously, because we are. I can also tell you that if the President, as Commander-in-Chief, believed, based on the information that he'd been given, that there was a national security threat at play here, or even a public safety threat at play here, he would issue the appropriate directives to not only law enforcement, but perhaps even the military if that was needed. I want to go back to something I said at the top. There has been no evidence of any of this activity in or near restricted spaces.
That's not what the senators said in the letter. They said, in fact, that they've been observed maneuvering near critical infrastructure, sensitive locations, including reservoirs and military installations, and cited a concern from law enforcement about public safety threats because a medevac helicopter was prevented from transporting a seriously injured patient for care because of the presence of these drones.
I stand by my opening statement.
Can you make that make more sense? Because I think people in New York and New Jersey see drones the size of an SUV over their house every night and think that that doesn't make any sense.
Certainly I understand why people would be looking at this and being concerned about it. We're concerned about it too, which is why we have the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, my goodness, looking at this. And we're taking it seriously. And we understand that people are concerned. We understand that they got questions. We got questions too. And we're working hard to get the answers to that. What I can tell you as we sit here today, at 2:16 in the afternoon on the 12th, is we haven't seen any indication thus far that there's a public safety risk, and we haven't seen.
Does the government know what they are?
We are still investigating this. I can't tell you definitively. I cannot characterize for you definitively what these sightings are. I can just go back to what I said at the opening. We've looked at the imagery. We can't corroborate some of the reported sightings through our own expert analysis using sophisticated detection techniques, but that doesn't mean that, we're putting our pen down here this afternoon and calling it a day. We're going to keep at this.
What are you doing, though?
We are continuing to investigate it, as I said in my opening statement, 2 federal agencies, as well as the United States Coast Guard and state and local law enforcement officials, which we are staying in close touch with.
Picking up on drones, has it reached a level, or is there a level determined by which the president or the administration, more directly, would prohibit any use of the airspace, since it is regulated, for drones for a period of time to try to figure out who they are and to remove this anxiety that people in the Northeast are feeling?
I don't know that we're at a stage right now where we're considering that sort of a policy option, but I can tell you that we're going to keep an open mind here, and I think whatever policy options we determine are appropriate will be informed by the investigation. And thus far, in this early stage of the investigation, there's just no national security threat that we see and no public safety risk. So again, you want to be careful that you don't you don't jump to conclusions and you don't jump to policy options that may not be appropriate at this particular stage. But we'll obviously see where it goes, and we'll be informed by investigators.
Sightings of drones in the sky, the size of cars, now dominating headlines in New Jersey. Now also sightings reported in New York, Pennsylvania, and in Maryland. The question of what they are now in 4 states and in the minds of multiple lawmakers and even the White House. Our CBS News national investigative correspondent Tom Hansen met with a drone unit expert. Tom, a wingspan of 8 feet, and then you just hear him use the term potential threats. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, well, Reed, that's exactly right. These are huge devices that are hovering out in the sky, and we don't still know who they are coming from, where they are coming from, what they're doing here. But what I can tell you is that obviously the size of these devices is a huge concern, because a lot of people are asking out there, why not just shoot them down? And, you know, even the sheriff that we met up with this past night, he said that given the chance, he would shoot one down too. But these are public safety concerns. Think of, you know, that Mini Cooper, that small car falling from 1,000 feet in the air. That could do some serious damage to anyone who's beneath it. And sorry, my earpiece is falling out here. But basically, you know, that is front of mind, no doubt, for all authorities here. But we still don't have the answers as to who's behind this. We do know that these are sophisticated things. Another thing the sheriff told me was that basically these drones have been able to outmaneuver the police drones, meaning they are moving faster than the police drones, which can reach a max speed of 40 miles per hour. They estimate that these drones can travel even faster, all the way up to 60 miles an hour. So they are moving quickly at laser speed through the sky.
Tom, we're also hearing of some letters fired off by key senators to the FAA, the Department of Homeland Security, even the FBI. Who sent those letters, and what are they demanding?
Yeah, a coalition of 4 senators from New Jersey and New York. They've banded together to push the FAA, FBI, and DHS to get some answers. They want to hear exactly what those federal government agencies are doing with municipal governments in order to get to the bottom of this growing mystery that seems to, you know, continue to grow in complexity as well. So, you know, that really is the basis of their letter. It was to issue frustration. It was to express concern for the public and for instance, critical operations within the public, like medevac helicopters. That was specifically referenced in that letter. So there is mounting frustration. They want answers, and clearly it just adds another group of people who don't have any answers as to what's going on.
All right, so we're going to go even deeper, Tom. Speaking of lawmakers, New York officials in Staten Island held a news conference earlier calling for answers too. Just to add to the conversation, let's listen to this.
Just be straight with us. Tell us what it is, and let's address it the best possible way so we can calm everyone down and make sure that these don't pose a threat to our national security and public safety. Because even if it is not nefarious, the fact that these things are flying all over is a public safety issue. there can be an accident. There could be an explosion. There could be a crash. This is a very densely populated area. And going back to the FAA restrictions, you cannot be flying these things above and around buildings if it's commercial or recreational. So something's not right here, and we need our government to give us answers and also put in place restrictions so that this does not continue, and enforce the existing regulations and restrictions. And that means our government needs to follow those rules as well.
Yeah, to borrow her words, Tom, something's not right. And really, you've been covering this story from the very beginning. It's like this drumbeat gets louder and louder. Lawmakers frustrated, the public frustrated. They want answers, any timeline as to when some of these letters fired off or some of these calls at news conferences could get answered with some answers.
Well, we know that the FBI is working in tandem with the municipal governments, but beyond that, we are getting so many conflicting theories as to where these drones are coming from. It's abundantly clear that no one really has an answer right now. You heard John Kirby saying that it's not a threat to national security, yet you have representatives on Capitol Hill saying that it is a foreign adversary. You have, just a lot of different theories out there, but not a lot of evidence. And all of these things have been followed up with a request for concrete factual evidence. And it just seems more and more to that drumbeat analogy that you said that we may finally get answers once one of these drones crashes into the ground or lands and is secured by law enforcement, but we are still waiting for that to happen. Once there can be forensics run on these drones, which are, as I mentioned, so highly sophisticated and can move so quickly, this is not a hobbyist using these drones. That is abundantly clear to law enforcement. Once we can run forensics on these drones, then the answers will become clearer as to who, where, and why they are here.
First New Jersey, now 4 states in total. Tom Hansen, thank you so much for investigating.
Sabrina, can you tell me what the Pentagon is doing to address this issue of drone sightings over New Jersey? It's near sensitive installations. The FBI is involved. What is the Pentagon doing?
Sure. So at this time, aware of those drone sightings that have been reported, at this time we have no evidence that these activities are coming from a foreign entity or the work of an adversary. We're going to continue to monitor what is happening, but at no point were our installations threatened when this activity was occurring.
Can you rule out that these are American drones or U.S. military drones?
These are not U.S. military drones. Again, this is being investigated by local law enforcement. What our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
Big. Moments ago, New York Governor Kathy Hochul weighed in on the New York drone sighting, saying on social media this time there is no evidence that these drones pose a public safety or national security threat, close quote. So I want to talk live to Jonathan Ruprecht. Jonathan, welcome into CBS News 24/7. You're fascinating to talk to because you're a drone attorney, you're an FAA certified commercial pilot, and you're a flight instructor. So I'm fascinated to see your read on all of this reporting, especially what we just heard from Hochul.
Yes, I think what strikes me is, kind of how when people are trying to get to the bottom of what is going on here, that seems to be the big issue, is they're trying to figure out what is going on, right? Are these bad guy drones? Are these good guy drones? We don't know. And we're kind of at the preliminary issue here of being able to figure out how to discriminate good guy drone, bad guy drone. And there seems to be a breakdown going on there from federal state and local law enforcement as to what is going on here. So when people are kind of asking the broader question, whose responsibility is it to track these things down? You have DHS is dealing with terrorism. You have DOJ and FBI dealing with criminal laws. We have the FAA dealing with protecting the airspace. They're dealing with safety. When you get higher up, they're trying to keep aircraft away from the drones and stuff like that. But we're dealing with at the lower portions here, the interaction of really these drones with the public and people on the ground. The FAA has created Part 89, the remote identification regulations, to allow state, local law enforcement, as well as the public, to be able to receive certain types of signals. And if those signals are being broadcasted, then you can be able to tell where this drone is and actually how high it is, because it's actually very hard to determine how high these drones are, even during the day. There's actually studies out there that explain that it is very difficult. And then now you're doing it at night. It's like, that's extremely hard.
Right.
And so you have remote identification also can potentially allow you to identify where the ground controller location is and then maybe go over there and stop them people. So is law enforcement even receiving these signals? And that needs to be clearly disclosed to everybody. Like, we don't have anything. Well, that's an interesting point, because if you don't actually receive anything and you are actually receiving everything else, you validated the equipment, then potentially you might have a careless clues, maybe a criminal type of actor here. But we haven't even got to that point. We're at the very preliminary stage of like, are these guys breaking the law? Because it's not illegal to fly a drone in the United States, especially at night. Recreational as well as non-recreational flyers can fly drones lawfully all the time without requesting permission from the federal government. And some of these people are actually having anti-collision lights on their drones, which appears to kind of make it look like they're actually trying to follow the law. So specifically 14 CFR 107.29 says you have to have an anti-collision light. So what's going on there? Now, There might be some indications as to maybe these might be bad guy drones if they're flying in an area that maybe they shouldn't be. For example, prisons. Do they really need to be flying over the prisons? What about military installations? Do you really have a legitimate interest, reason to fly over a military installation? Probably not. But one thing that they might be able to fly near that kind of causes a lot of confusion is airports. For example, the FAA has implemented this Lance system, is what it's called, and it allows for rapid authorizations. And in the news, there's been a lot of talks about drones flying near airports, and that's dangerous and scary and stuff like that. But over the last so many years, the FAA has granted over 1 million authorizations for drones to fly lawfully near airports. So that's 1 million reasons why there could be a lawful drone flight happening.
So tell me this, with somebody with your expertise, when you just look at this and you've seen a lot of the footage, what do you think these things are? Our investigation shows 8 feet wingspan. Just to your eye, what are they and what's their capability? Best case scenario, it's just somebody flying around. Worst case scenario?
It's nothing. There's nothing illegal about having an 8-foot drone flying around, right? And so it could just be a guy with an 8-foot drone flying around at night. He's testing it out. Worst case scenario, it could be an individual that is trying to do reconnaissance, right? You could have either some type of private industrial espionage. You could also have nation state actor espionage, something maybe along those lines. So if you don't see anything underneath it, that might indicate that it might be terrorism, or maybe it's a precursor to terrorism. But that's in a worst case scenario. At the same time, we have many, many, many lawful people flying lawfully all the time, helping people and save lives.
So, you have different layers to this. You have federal, you have local, you have state law enforcement. Do you think that this case now, and we're seeing it now in 4 states, is going to help us hone the coordination between those different layers of government, perhaps in responding to something like this in the future?
I believe so. I mean, this is a good wake-up call for everyone to figure out, like, hey, are we actually receiving these remote identification signals? And as the local law enforcement on the ground, are these officers trained on how to do that? Potentially, and so that way you can kind of escalate it up from there, saying, hey, guys, there's a drone that is not broadcasting. Potentially, that makes it suspicious at that point because it's not following the law. Therefore, we need to kind of escalate and further investigate. And so it's really kind of honing everybody here. Additionally, even if you have identified that is a potential suspicious drone that you need to get into, that creates a lot of issues. Because how do you go further about tracking and kind of finding out where this the controller is? Where's the bad guy, if you will? If there isn't a bad guy, it might be a clueless guy that just needs educating, going like, hey, by the way, give me your license registration. I need to see figuring out what's going on here. there needs to be some effort on state, local, and federal, as well as coordinating efforts as to allow the local law enforcement, the boots on the ground, to be able to do more advanced types of detection. Now, there's an interesting point here because people are kind of bringing up this issue. How do you deal with the bad guy drones? The first part is, right, we got the detect, and you kind of have to discriminate, if you will, good guy drone, bad guy drone, suspicious drone, right? And then if you want to go about resolving the problem, you need to defeat it. And the problem there is when you get into the detection and you get into the defeating, there are a lot of laws that have been created which hamper federal, state, and local law enforcement in how they potentially go about doing that. For example, we have the Fourth Amendment protections, which were intentionally designed from basically, it's designed to hamper the federal government from doing complete mass surveillance of people inside their homes, right? As you have the Caro case and as well as the Carpenter case, when you have people out and about and you're tracking their cell phones and stuff like that, you have that case law playing this whole situation there. You also have Fourth Amendment, reasonable expectation of privacy in people's homes. You have Wiretap Act. So if you're trying to intercept these signals that maybe are encrypted or there's a modulation that is not readily available. So even in the detection, there are problems from a constitutional and a statutory federal law standpoint that are hampering federal and state and local law enforcement from even kind of further investigating, double clicking, if you will, into these issues. And then even if you get past that, how do you go about interdicting and stopping these drones? If, let's say they are bad, there is an issue there because currently granted from federal statutes are that only certain federal agencies have the ability to do these types of interdiction, destruction type of countering, the defeats, if you will.
To knock them out of the sky.
Yeah, exactly. The shoot them out of the sky analogy, right? So you got DOD and you have DOJ, you have certain ones there, but that is not given to the state and local. And so sometimes people are bringing this up and they're saying, well, we have drones. How do we actually resolve it? And that's creating a tension there because state and local is wanting to come in and they're wanting to create something. And at the same time, there's an issue there of how do we make this all work while at the same time promoting commerce and allowing these drones to fly? Because you can see where this can go from here is that a creative state might want to say, we want to create a law that you have to put our specific state remote identification law, a device on it. And it's going to cost $1,000 a year or something, because we're going to bring everybody to, know what's going on, safety, all that. Well, that's going to cause a lot of problems because people are not going to actually be able to fly there. There might be congestion of the airspace and elsewhere because people will be flying drones elsewhere and not here. And so that creates a really big hindrance to the federal government basically integrating drones across the United States. So when people kind of create a law, what happens is when there's a cause, there's an effect, right? The effect is sometimes drones go fly somewhere else, and that causes an over concentration, potentially creating more risk here. And so we have in the Constitution, we have this basically that what it is that the federal law is the supreme law of the land. And the idea is you just don't want the federal government having to kind of constantly deal with all of these state and local laws and trying to implement everything, and that it's going to supersede. And if there is a field preemption kind of argument or there's a conflict preemption, then the federal law is going to take control. And in aviation, there's Supreme Court case law that has held that it is a field preempted area, that it's so heavily regulated that it's kind of implied that, hey, there's nothing really here for you state and local guys to really do. Additionally, there's another argument that the creation, basically the compliance with this particular type of law is so impossible that it is substantially frustrated or prevents the person from doing it. It's a conflict. And we have an example of that over in, it was the city of Newton over in Massachusetts. There was a case over there where the city said, you cannot fly below 400 feet. Well, at the same time, the federal government is saying, you have to fly your drone, right, under 400 feet. So that's the big issue.
Well, a lot of people getting their voices heard, getting scholarly about it. Meanwhile, the people on the ground in 4 states saying, what the hell is it? Jonathan, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation.